So, I left a comment on someone else's video on here the other day, and I got this in response. I was not only impressed by the speed with which this spam bot replied to my comment, I was also impressed by the reported ability of the psychic to find my ex. Given that I've never actually been in a relationship as such, and so by definition don't have any exes, I'm kind of curious as to how this guy proposes to get back something I've never had in the first place. In other news, Milo Hanrahan is still trying to claw back people's attention. And yes, I do still insist upon calling him that. If you remember, Milo announced he'd contracted heterosexuality recently, and he's made a new video reinforcing that by showing him getting rid of what he calls his sodomy stone. This is, unfortunately, less interesting than it sounds at first, because it's just him supposedly throwing his supposedly $150,000 engagement ring into the ocean off Hawaii. He calls it his sodomy stone because it reminds him of, his former gay lifestyle. I discovered this story via the surfs here on YouTube, and I find it to be bullshit on various levels. I don't think anyone really takes the whole ex-gay thing seriously to start with, but also, 1, we've got no evidence that this putative ring actually cost that. 2, we also don't really know that that was it that he threw into the ocean. And 3, this is the guy who responded to reports that he was $2 million in debt by saying it was actually $4 million and that he'd already sold his ring to help pay that off. Now, Lance from the Surfs made the point that Milo could have more effectively shown he was for real by selling the ring and giving the proceeds to a charity or something. Even if he only got a fraction of what he claims to have paid, it would still have been something at least. But having thought more about that, if Milo wasn't full of shit and the ring really did cost that much and he did sell it, he'd probably just give the money to a gay conversion mob because that's what he's all about now. I suppose it's just surprising that he didn't throw his former boyfriend into the ocean as well. That would have shown he was really being serious. On the subject of irrelevant fools, Glenn Danzig. Glenn Danzig had an old man yelling at clouds moment recently where he was pontificating about how the punk movement of the 70s would never have happened if modern-day political correctness and woke bullshit had been around then because cancel culture would have wiped it out first. Woke bullshit and cancel culture like the dead Kennedys, Nazi punks, fuck off. Now, Glenn was actually around for the early years of punk. He formed the Misfits in 1977, and they put out their first single in August that same year. So you'd think he would remember how much cancellation the punk scene actually did face. Like Black Flag being surveilled by the police who thought they were a drug gang, and the general issues with the hardcore scene. Plus, over in the UK, the whole career of the Sex Pistols could be summed up as almost non-stop cancellation, sometimes figurative and sometimes literal. Media moral panic, police harassment, violence from random knife-wielding gangs, industry harassment, pressing plants wouldn't make their records, shops wouldn't sell them, radio stations wouldn't play them, venues wouldn't let them perform live. And when God Save the Queen was the biggest selling record in the country, the British Music Research Bureau allegedly kind of rigged the UK singles chart that week so that Rod Stewart nominally had the highest selling record that week. Basically, the Sex Pistols faced actual consequences for writing things like God Save the Queen, while Danzig was watching a bunch of shitty B-horror movies and turning them into songs like I Turned Into a Martian. But the Misfits did get cancelled themselves a few times, including one time in San Francisco. My friend Troy pointed me towards the delightful story of Danzig beginning this show by shouting homophobic abuse at the audience, which is never nice, but especially not in San Francisco, and the audience responded by throwing stuff at them. And then Doyle, the guitarist, and whoever the drummer was at that time, started physically attacking members of the audience, who then basically rioted. Danzig later claimed the whole thing was blown out of proportion and it wasn't all that bad, but in any case, the Misfits never played San Francisco again because no venue would have them after that. That wasn't them being woke, that was them trying to save their properties from being destroyed. Anyway, since we're talking about cancellation, let's briefly observe the passing of Ernest Angley, who's been cancelled by Time and Biology at the age of 99. Now, normally when someone dies at 99, like the recently departed Prince Philip, I feel sorry for them that they made it that close to 100 years old without actually quite getting there. Having said that, Ernest Angley can get fucked. Even by the standards of American televangelists, Ernest was scum. He exploited the free labour of his church's membership in running the church's TV station and other properties. He made faith-healing claims about Jesus being able to cure HIV. He coerced an elderly woman with dementia into signing him a cheque for several $100,000. He sexually abused the church membership in various ways, including forcing women to have abortions and men to have vasectomies, and he would inspect the men's bits before and after the operations. And that apparently wasn't the only thing he liked doing with other men's genitals, despite a career spent railing against homosexuality. All that's without even mentioning his transcendent toupee, which I'm damned if I can work out who he thought he was fooling with it. I'm not going to feel sorry that Ernest didn't quite make it to his 100th birthday. I'm going to feel sorry instead for the people he harmed because he didn't die sooner. That's it for this episode of Inanimate Carbon God. Until next time, bye for now.